We're not live yet. Oh, we are
Ah,
live now.
hello. Hello, Pink
Did you
Rick.
just call me Pink?
I called you Pink, even though that's arguably red. Uh, we're
Here
just
we
gonna
go.
bl- we're just gonna blame it on the colors are not coming through properly.
No. There's yeah. The hue in my camera has been slightly out of cast, kind of a thing. So yeah, I look a little bit more paler, and this is a lot more pinker than it.
Yeah, and this is a lot more like is this pink on a tan trip, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
still a shade of pink.
Well, no, and absolutely. Welcome everybody that's joining us. Yeah, it's in Canada. And here I thought it was more international, or in Canada, it's Pink Day, and I told Fati that it's Pink Day, and she go, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess I better wear pink." And it's our anti-bullying day.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's everybody is wearing. Well, most people are wearing pink today in honor of the day, and it's about lifting people's spirits up,
I love
encouraging
that.
people. Yeah, giving them a hand up instead of a push down. And I guess it's kind of appropriate that motivation came back in the topic about which is in some ways it's kind of appropriate when you're thinking about motivation, like how I know personally, and I know this isn't about bullying, but I don't know what your experience is through your school, but my last name brought a lot of attention, and I was, I had a lot of bullying going on, teasing,
Mhm.
whatever, kind of a thing. Um, and there was one time there, I was literally getting pounced on daily, trying to get into school, and
Wow.
until my dad interfered, and like I was, and here I go again. But it was, I was had a dog. You know what a dog pile is, where everybody piles up on top of you, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
was happening to me in the schoolyard, and next thing I know, I just started feeling the release of weight coming off me, and I looked up, and there was my dad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he had followed me to school, and um, and then sort of interfered it. And it's funny, I don't remember ever being pounced on after that, at least at that school, anyway. So, anyways, I digress. I digress.
I guess he made his point, right? And it's kind of like I'm watching my kids, my 9-year-old, like I feel like bullying often just comes up in like small ways innocently,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And just because kids are following other kids saying certain things and the need to fit in or like seeing, not knowing how to relate to different. But I do know that at least in their school, it's a really big topic. They really discuss with their children, they explain it to them. It's something that they really stress.
hmm
And I'm happy that there's so much awareness being created at that age, because that I feel like that's the age where you can fall into it without really knowing what you're doing.
absolutely, absolutely, and to pick up skills or knowledge, and like you said, that whole awareness piece about it. I mean, it's becoming more prevalent working backwards. I mean, I don't think there's that many people that have not experienced some sort of bullying,
Yeah.
and even as adults, in the work environment, um, the environment that I sort of in EMS and fire services and various other things. There's so many stories about that, and the term "we eat our young." I don't know if it ever originated from that, but that was a term that was quite used often. That it was rare that you were encouraged; you were more belittled for what you were doing, as opposed to being encouraged and learning. As an environment, but things are changing. Things are changing. Um, But anyways, yeah. Hi, Dina. Welcome back.
She's the best. She's the
She
most
is the
loyal.
best. She
She
is the best.
is.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Always with us. So, but I wanted to. This came up again because uh, so much of hi Ange, good to see you again, and
Hi,
Randall.
Angela.
Yeah, Randall's in the background. That's great. Um, this I don't know how your week went, and I know you shared a little bit.
Let's not go there.
No, 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 no. But I mean, you can't talk about motivation unless you talk about um, what was it? I was going to say demotivation. I had a better word for that. It's like, okay, what happened to that good word I had?
How about lack of motivation? That will do.
Isn't that so funny? But it's sort of like, like you feel like you've got some traction going, and then all of a sudden it just feels like momentum is stopped.
Well, feeling stuck, is that what you were looking for?
Well, not necessarily stuck. It just seems stopped. And one of the things that sort of came up that kind of got me off that position was I was in a workshop that I just sort of started to talk to you about. It was put on by Melissa Ford, who wrote a book called The Service Game, who was trained by Steve Chandler. And Steve Chandler is a well-known coach in the coaching world. He wrote the Prosperous Coach book, and which has become a
With
huge
Rich Lippman, right?
yeah, with Rich Lifton, yeah. And anyway, she had a workshop, and the last day of the workshop was about prison bars.
Mm.
And she talked about what are your prison bars that are getting in the way, or what you think are getting in the way of you moving forward. And there was, and there was so many things that came up for me. Well, there was a lot of sharing and a lot of group breakouts, kind of a thing, which were really helpful to flush out ideas and thoughts. But I started to look like anytime I felt I was not motivated, it was because I was coming up to a prison bar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A block, right? I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
I see motivation as what drives us to take action. And when that motivation is not there, it's an indicator of something you need to look into, right?
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
just like when you get triggered, it's just like, sad feelings, or, like when that motivation dries out, there's something there that's not quite working for you. Again, you got to do the work. You got to look into it, and keep pushing and just take action is not the answer. And I feel like most people respond to that lack of motivation by taking more action, by piling on more things, like adding on to the pile, hoping that more knowledge or more stuff is going to get them there, right? Whereas the problem is, when you're not motivated to do something, you just don't care to do it, right? And that it's really as simple as that. My motivation is not high for it. I just don't really care to do it, and forcing yourself to do it anyway. That's, I feel like that kind of crosses into what people like confuse, like, I'm afraid of something, I'm going to do it anyway. And sometimes it's not really fear. It's just like you're not into it. It's as simple as that. It doesn't align with some part of you. There's a part of you that's being neglected. There's a part of you that needs something different. There's a part of you that is not really feeling that drive, right? And that's just another opportunity for me to be like, okay, my motivation is really low in this. what is suffering here that is, pulling me back from this thing that I know I have motivation to do this one thing I'm trying to accomplish, but somehow the actions that I set up myself to do, I'm not motivated to take them, right?
No.
And we often tend to avoid the work, we avoid looking at it, and we push anyway, right? And then it becomes counterproductive because now you're really slowing yourself down, pushing right against a path that doesn't feel fluid, doesn't feel like you're in flow, right? Whereas if you had stopped to begin with and taken the time to look at, okay, are all my ducks in a row? Is everything aligned with what I ultimately want to accomplish? What is in this that's not feeling aligned or right, or that's triggering me to be avoiding? And you would truthfully be more productive doing that, like really pausing the work and looking at it and then redirecting, than just keep pushing, because you can try to keep pushing yourself for weeks at a time and then not be productive, not being able to get there, feeling frustrated, because then that sets up a chain reaction of, you're basically fighting against yourself, right?
Yep.
Rebelling against your own plans and your own,
Exactly. And and you said a couple of really key things for me that highlight is the feeling part, right?
Mhm.
That you know we have a guide inside, like we have our own intuition and wisdom, and when we're in the flow state, we you're in the flow, like just time disappears, struggle disappears, right? Things are moving along, but the minute they stop, it's like, oh, there's something wrong, not realizing that maybe it was okay to stop, like maybe that is the stopping point. And you're right, when I find myself trying to, well, wait a minute, no, let me just push through it, let me just you know um, take that next step and force it or plan my way, like take my intellect and kind of work my way around it or create a problem thinking that there's something wrong, then it compounds the frustration, it compounds. And I find by kind of letting go of that and saying, you know what, maybe it isn't the right time, maybe it isn't, right? the the key that comes up, one of the questions that comes up is, well, what if you still, because it's part of your work, let's say, going to your boss saying, you know what, it's just I just not feeling it today.
Oh.
Like I there's you know what I'm saying, like it's like there are times I've gone to work and I'm going, I'm just dragging my butt here. It's like um what about those times?
When you feel like you're dragging
Well,
yourself, right?
like
I mean,
when it
those
is like,
times,
yeah,
those times to me, let's say you're talking about the example you just gave is about a corporate job, right? Actually,
yeah,
how appropriate. I used to wear this shirt and I
yes,
worked as a designer, and I loved what I did creatively, but I dragged myself to work because I did not like the environment. I did not like what ultimately the companies that I worked for stood for. I did not like the industry. It didn't align with what I believed, right? So I dragged myself to work, right?
mm,
So I could get myself to do the work when I focused on something that was beyond just the job, right? So that's one
all right.
way, right?
Mhm.
And, for instance, one of the last few years was like buying the apartment that I live in, right?
Okay.
The job was a means to an end, and I hated every single minute of it. I want to make that very clear. It was tough. And at the same time, I kept doing it. I could stick with it because I knew that it was going to give me something I really wanted, right? So that's one way. And the other way is like, you know what? Really being honest with yourself. Does this not fit me anymore? What are my choices? What can I do? There's this woman that I coach regularly, and she's has this dilemma, right? Her corporate job, she wants to walk away from it, doesn't align with her. She wants to do something else. And I think that the moment that you start planning an exit, or you start reframing this place that you're at, this position that you have, as a means to an end, right? I
Mhm.
need to stay here for another year so that I can do this and this, then your motivation becomes that, right? And no longer like the actual job that you're in. But if you find yourself in a job and feeling stale and feeling like you're dragging your feet, and that's it again, it's an indicator that there's something to look at there, right? Why is
It,
my heart not into it, right?
and that reframing is a useful tool, right? It's a useful
Very.
tool, right?
Yeah.
Because I've looked at your work and you are a fabulous designer.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
like I like there's something of you that speaks loud and clear from your work. Um,
Thank you.
so to beat what's that?
Well, and yet that's
Yeah.
not the work that was being produced, right?
No. Yeah.
That's not, I mean, some of it was, but like the more bland, like fitting in with the rest was the work that I actually got paid for, right?
Yeah.
Which is what led me to leave the industry. But sorry,
Follow
continue.
the crowd and you'll get paid.
Yeah, basically do what everybody else is doing that's selling and you'll
Yeah.
get paid. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
wasn't what I wanted to do with my
Yeah.
talent, with my creativity, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
No, but I think that that's important. What you're saying is that when you have a bigger picture, and I find that very clear for me, is when I have a bigger picture away from me, you know, it uh, things do change. The view
Hmm.
changes, right? Because then it becomes just part of the process of getting.
Exactly. It's like it's a means to an end, right?
Yeah.
I'm using this to get where I want to get,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes, it turns out that it really is about reframing in that way, right?
A
Because
lot of
I feel like often people like just stick to it and they stay in it, and the frustration grows, the discontent grows, and they just end up quitting. And now the very thing that they feared by sticking to a job they didn't like has become true, right? Whereas if you're really able to be honest with yourself and see it for what it is, you know what, I have this job, I've done this for 20 years, sucks, I don't really like it. What can I do? How can I use this? How can I leverage this to get where I want to get, right? I still have a job, I still got paid. Where do I want to go? How can this fit into that picture? How can I use it to get there? It's a very different way of looking at it, right? Now, instead of being focused on, I hate going there every day, I hate spending these 8 hours there, like, because that's a tendency. That's what we do. We just rehearse all the things that bug us every day, But if I can instead focus on, it's gonna be challenging today, and at the same time, it's really teaching me patience. It's really teaching me to really see this as a tool to get to a different place, and this is what is going to give me the freedom, the thing that I want, the place that I want to get to. So it's really a ride, right? It's a journey there, and that, mindset is everything in this case, right? Mindset, when you can really stay in that mindset that feels empowering, it changes everything for you, for your experience around you.
because you can feel the difference, right?
You
Like
feel the difference, yeah.
and that's your indicator, right? Like when if you're in struggle, like if you have no motivation, which is a feeling like you can't, like it's not a place where you can get to. I think, and this is just kind of where I'm going. I feel is motivation is our default.
Hmm.
Like we are naturally motivated, right, for action. Like we're always ready for it. So we're always ready to evolve and grow. That's our default. It's when we have that stuck feeling, in the feeling of struggle, you notice there's no progress. There's not, so it naturally feels unnatural, in the sense of you're not going anywhere. So there's frustration because our natural tendency is to keep moving forward. And
Mm-hmm.
so when it looks like circumstances or other things that are sort of getting in the way, um, that's when my prison bars are sort of more prevalent, right? So what am I seeing that's holding me back? And it's exactly what you're saying is like, well, it's part of the process. And if you enroll it as part of the process of moving forward, then it's all possibilities. Everything opens up now for you, right? You naturally become unstuck because now you're moving towards, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's not a lot of huge amount of clarity as to what is transpiring, but you're moving in a more organic
Intentional way.
way
Yeah,
rather than a
organic. Yeah.
forced way, right?
Yeah. I think, all it comes down to again is, this word, I feel like there should be a very special word for this piece of the work, which is the word clarity. Like
Yes,
the
that's a good
word
word.
clarity is such an important word and so meaningful in
Yeah.
this work, right? Oftentimes we're not able to be motivated to do anything because we're so unclear. We're so like stuck in all these other programs that are running in our brains that are keeping us there, keeping us in the story, keeping us in the discontent, keeping us rehearsing versus really like, and it was exactly. And as long as that's going on, you cannot become clear, right?
No.
As long as there's all this stuff going on, you can't see things clearly.
No.
So the only way to see things going on and to identify what actually motivates you, you have to stop the story. You have to like slow down. You have to let it settle and then really honestly look at yourself and ask yourself, what do I want? Do I even know what I want? And that very much happened to me many times in my life, but more recently when once I became a mom, like I went from this identity as a designer, I pretty much like left that job as soon as we bought the apartment, and I was like, oh, this feels amazing, and then I got pregnant. I think I was already pregnant. I had my child, and then now I'm like, who am I? Like I never had the time or the clarity or the mental space to ask myself, what do I really want now? I just left a situation that didn't fit me, that didn't feel right anymore, that it felt so liberating to leave, And also, like, I felt conflicted too because I worked hard to get where I was. I went to school, I graduated, I worked hard to have a position as a designer, and it was the creative side of it was very fulfilling to me. Then I just kind of left what didn't feel comfortable without really doing any work around processing it or like any next steps. The next step was like falling into parenthood, right? And then once that settled down, where I could start thinking about what to do with my life and career, there were other issues that came into play around, the feeling like pulled into two different directions. I want my career, but I also want to be with my children. That's something that often
Mhm.
women struggle with, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I stayed in that space of feeling like torn this way or this way, and feeling like I had to make a choice. I had to choose my children, right? But never really processing, never really seeing other avenues or other ways to make that happen, right? Because I was behind those prison bars.
Yep.
I really saw those
Yep.
bars. Those
Yep.
bars were lifted in front of me, and I was so busy figuring it all out, like juggling parenthood, and like juggling being someone else, and you can arguably talk about a lot of the hormonal shifts and the biological changes that a woman goes through that adds to the picture. That's like a triple dose of like confusion
Yeah.
and uh so yeah, so for as long as I was in that space, I could never, years went by before I could really like critically think about what do I want to do and where do I want to go with this. And even when I took the step to like start my, you know, my career as a designer by launching my own business again, I kind of fell into that too, because it was more from a place of survival and desperation. I need to make something happen. I was pushing, 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 right? And I hadn't really looked at all the different pieces to see what was motivating me to make this push. And, you know, in the moment that that plan crumbled or that those walls kept like showing up out of nowhere, and I had to stop because of my circumstances, because of what I was going through. This was right before COVID. The moment that I had to stop, I really realized, oh, and I started doing some work on myself. I realized, what was I proving? I was really trying to prove something to someone that I could do it, but what was really there? What was really
Yeah,
motivating me other than that? You
yeah,
know?
yeah. And yet it was paradoxical in the sense of it felt like motivation, but it correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt like it was showing up in more of a negative result. Where,
It was very much my ego trying to prove that I could do this thing and I could make something happen that I wanted to happen. I mean, listen, there were some, you know, fundamental things behind what I was doing with this business that I really believed in.
sure, yeah,
But I never really sat down and like looked at my values and dissected myself and my life and what I wanted and where I wanted to go ultimately, and then made a decision to create this business, right?
yeah,
I just created this business because that's the one skill I have and that's all I can ever do, be a designer, right?
yeah,
So now I'm going to create this line and I'm going to try and mold it and fit it into some of my beliefs. It just didn't work, you know, because the ultimate motivation wasn't like there wasn't a vision to go somewhere that really aligned with me. It
yeah.
was really proving that I can do it and proving that I can do something that has an impact. You know, I can do that. You know, how can I blend the two things together? It just didn't work because ultimately it didn't align with. I didn't know what was at that point, right? I just
Absolutely.
didn't know
Yeah,
fully what was.
yeah,
So, and but ultimately, I feel like that was the means to an end, which was the end was me becoming a coach,
yeah.
right? I learned so much from it. So, again, you know, we get stuck and you know, maybe we don't know what our motivation is and we often like can stay stuck for years. And at the same time, when you look back, those are the years that kind of shaped you to be able to come to an understanding today or do the work or really like
Well, it's
be
part of a
motivated.
process, right? And that
Yeah.
was the one thing that became really clear in completing that workshop was, um, first of all, you had to face your prison bars. Like you had to sort of like, okay, so what do you actually think? And I know there's quite a few people that do listen to this broadcast that are in businesses and are entrepreneurs and and I know being one myself, there are times when you just feel like it's not moving fast enough, right?
Yeah. Or time is moving too fast.
I'm just moving too fast and you're not keeping up, like one of the two, right?
Yeah.
But but when you start to like that can be the prison bar. That could be one of the prison bars is time. Like one of them, like
Time.
it's funny, the lady that was sharing the room with me was um I think she was in her early 20s and I'm in my mid 60s. And her one of her prison bars was she was too young and she didn't
Mm.
feel that she was credible enough and she didn't have because she wanted to move into the corporate world and that she felt like she needed these credibility and all this other kind of stuff, right? And so that became a prison bar. That became her stopping point, sort of thing. And I said, well, that's funny because in some ways I used my age as a stopping point. That I've become a dinosaur in the industry and no
Mm.
longer relevant anymore in the industry. I'm retired from the industry that I want to serve. I want to serve people who are in the first responders, that are struggling and need help. And but that's just me. That's just my personal thinking. Both scenarios are just my personal thoughts about it, right? What was interesting was the part 2 of the exercise. And that
Mm.
one was to become a defense lawyer in on your behalf.
I like that.
Yes. So did I. So first of all, the first part, and people could take heart to this that are listening to it, is to list all your prison bars. List everything that you think is coming up against you from not moving forward. Just whatever it is, like free flow, right? Don't overthink it. Don't judge it. Just lay it on the line. But then, review the list, then hire a defense lawyer, which just happens to be you again. but your only job is now to defend your ability to move forward, regardless of what you feel is evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So, like a good defense lawyer will break down the prosecutor, right? Because now you were the prosecutor. You were saying these are the reasons why Rick Rupenthal cannot move forward.
Mm.
Your Honor, I bring you different evidence.
It's a little bit, it reminds me a little bit of the limiting, like how you debunk limiting beliefs.
Well, and
Because that's what the prison bars are. You're limiting
yeah,
beliefs. Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was just a fun exercise. It was something that I never thought of doing before. Like, yeah,
I
I could,
like that.
but to be a defense attorney, right? And so you go back into it, and you sort of say, well, you know, contrary to what the prosecutor says about age, let me tell you, and you list all the different things that you never gave yourself credit for.
Yeah. List the evidence. Yeah.
Less, yeah, and it was such a it was really a fun, refreshing exercise, and it's sort of like, and then of course you realize that like I'm the one that put the prison bars up, um, and I actually have the key. Oh, wait a minute, the door isn't even locked.
Yeah. It's really all about what you choose to believe, right? And, sometimes I feel like that can be really triggering to people, right? When, when like a coach tells you, well, you just have to make a different decision about the situation, right? This is a disempowering belief that you have. All you have to do is make a more empowering decision. It really, truly is about that. The
It really
problem
is.
is not that simple, right? It is that simple, but it's not that simple to bring yourself to take that step and think that way, because your brain will just show you all the evidence why your limiting belief is true,
It
right?
all it always wants to,
Yeah,
right? I mean, because
yeah.
but when you understand that the design of the mind is really to keep you safe, right? It's
Hmm.
there. It's there to protect you against the saber-toothed tigers and various other things, right? And because we don't have a lot of saber-toothed tigers around anymore, it's taken on other activities. And part of it is when you start to feel uncomfortable, it feels it's a signal that you are in danger.
Hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means you're uncomfortable, right? And for me, it's knowing that in spite of the uncomfortableness, right, I can still actually move forward and find that the uncomfortableness actually kind of disappears. It's not that I'm forcing myself past the uncomfortableness. I'm acknowledging that I'm uncomfortable, and so it's a bit of a reframing tool, because you could say I'm uncomfortable, or I want to prospect this client, but I'm uncomfortable. Okay,
Hmm.
which means I'm not going to do it because of that big but. And if you stay ahead of the but, which is your goal, right? You could go, I really want to prospect this client, and I'm
And
uncomfortable,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you're bringing uncomfortableness into it. I guarantee you, when you're actually in that prospecting, if that's the next step, uncomfortableness disappears. It actually literally disappears because you're no longer focused on the uncomfortableness. Up to that point, that's all you're focusing on. But when you take that one little, bring it in with you, not dismiss it or do anything with it. When you bring it in, it disappears. I just I just want to share what Angela was saying, that she actually did a list this morning and burned that list as a way of letting go. Good for you, Ange.
So I I love what you just said, and I find it to be so true. And at the same time, I really always like to relate to people when they are super thick into their negative thinking, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, the programming is so deep and rooted and strong that it is very difficult for people to get themselves out of it, right? That's
Oh yeah,
where coaching is really helpful, but often the negative thinking can even prevent you from even hiring a coach, right?
yeah.
Or seeing a therapist, or right.
Well, you get down to
So,
like, how can I get help? Like it's too far,
yeah.
right? It's too far.
So I feel like one thing that has really helped me, that I have recommended to my clients, to people that I've coached, is hypnotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I know hypnotherapy is a big word, but there's a way that you can take that like evidence and like create your own like little track to start rewiring your brain, right? And it's something that I use with my clients to just really take them from the disempowering belief to the empowering belief that often they don't really believe, right? So I always tell them, make a decision that's the opposite of what you believe, right? And make it not so big that you're just not going to do it because you don't believe it, right? Don't go from like, I can't make any money to like, I'm going to make $1 million next month, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's just too big of a step,
It's a
right?
bit of a leap. Yeah.
Yeah, just I can't make any money. I'm working on the skills that will help me make money, right?
Yeah.
That's a first step, very, very first step. Record that. Gather your evidence, like you were talking about. Gather your evidence for why that's possible, why that statement is true. Record it, and then listen to it 3 times a day. I can guarantee you that your brain will start
It get
rewiring.
it
That's the
gets the
way.
message.
That's is,
Yeah.
huh?
It gets the message.
It gets a message. It's as simple as that. Our brains are constantly being wired with things that we are not choosing to wire them with, right?
Yeah.
It's conditioning, right? What you hear on the news, why do they say that like the news can be toxic? Turn it off, stop listening, because your brain is constantly listening in the background. And if you hear something often enough, now you believe it. That's how beliefs are wired in. That's why children are the prime example of where all these beliefs are formed, because their
Mm-hmm.
brains are like basically empty computers, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
now all this stuff is getting installed and they just like absorb it all, right? They just take the information, it gets wired in, and it's not really a choice for them, right? Because
No.
they're so young, they can make that choice. The
No.
same thing is true for us, right? What we hear constantly when someone even labels us something over and over and over and over again, now we believe that about ourselves, right? So you can do the same thing for yourself, but wire in something that you do want to believe. I think I love the fact that Angela talked about like burning the list, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Now wire in what you want to believe. Don't just write it down. Literally listen to it, read it every day, post it somewhere. It depends on what your learning modality is, but really listening to something, that's what hypnotherapy is. They just repeat something over and over and over and over again until the new pathway is created,
Yep.
right?
And
So,
and there was something else in the workshop that kind of really ties into what you've just said. Um, and they talked about, and I'm going to label it because I had something very similar to this, oh, maybe 30 years ago. I called it the 1% solution.
mm, interesting.
Yeah. And like what you really just related to us was about the, like we tend to look for big shifts to demonstrate change, like,
Mm,
right? So when I make $10,000 a month, then I will know, or something that's really kind of significant. um I had a client that's was basically saying, when I wake up and I'm not depressed every day, I know things will be better, right? And so we're always looking for something that's really significant to demonstrate the change in ourselves. And what Melissa was suggesting was that it doesn't take a big shift. It only takes a 1% change. So when you take a 1% step towards what you want, you're actually taking 2 steps away, or 2% away from what you don't want.
mhm.
So the shift is only 1%. It's actually a 200% shift. And that's huge. So when you think about it, all you need to do is take a micro step towards what you want. And that alone brings a big shift. And just think of compound interest.
Well, it's stacking, right? It's 1% on top of 1% on top of 1%. You eventually get there, right? It's like the ultimate goal maybe is to make $1 million, or the ultimate goal maybe is to make $10,000, whatever it is, right? That's your end goal. That process is broken up into a lot of 1%, right? The shift doesn't happen overnight, you
No,
know?
it's broken up. Like, that activity is broken up into steps. What I'm
Yeah.
talking about is you only need a 1% shift in your mindset to move
Oh, yeah.
to
Yeah, absolutely.
get you start moving in the right direction. It's
Absolutely.
not a big, oh, when I get smart enough, or when I get all that kind of stuff. That's all just prison bars that you make, right? It really only takes a 1% shift in your mindset that moves you towards where you need to go, kind of thing. So
It's like like making that 1% shift in your ship, in the direction it's going. It's going to change your ultimate
oh,
destination, right?
absolutely. Anybody that's sailed knows that 1% over a period of time, right? Like, you, my I have a quick story. My brother, out here in the West Coast, it gets very foggy, very,
Mm,
and so we're on an island ourselves, and he wanted to go to another island that was about, I don't know, maybe 15 miles away, and he had a general idea of where it was. Okay, he had no compass. I'll just give you a quick.
okay, I can only imagine where this is going.
So yeah. So anyways, he says it's over there. He's actually was pointing to a piece of the United States. And so he says, so he started to point his boat in that direction, and he had to go slow because it's foggy and you can't see anything in front of you. Um, it was almost like 2 hours later, he sees land. Perfect. It was his starting point.
That's really funny. Yeah,
He just
where was land? He found land.
he found land. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So but in a way, it kind of comes full circle to what you were talking about. Is, where is your compass pointing?
That piece of clarity, right? Like the address on the GPS, the
Yeah,
compass, the
yeah,
clarity, the vision, whatever you want to call it, all those words describe is knowing where you're going,
yeah,
knowing what you truly want so that
yeah.
you can get there, right? You can put that address in there.
Get clarity, right?
Hmm.
Get clarity, and
Clarity and like brutal honesty with yourself.
well, that's
Just
part of
be
clarity.
very honest about it. Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
this is not fitting in. This career, this like designer career that I envisioned when I was in design school. It was going to be great and glamorous. Ain't that? It was not that at all, for many different reasons, right? And sometimes it takes us years to admit that to ourselves, right?
Well, sometimes lifetimes. Sometimes.
Lifetimes. And along the way, though, some great things were created. A lot of learning happened, and I grew and I definitely established what I don't like, which is also part of clarity, right? How are we
Absolutely.
going to know what we don't like if we don't ever
Well,
experience
you
something that we
have
don't like?
that's right. You got to try different things, right? You different and just you know, and part of it is knowing the flow, right? When it's right, it's right, and when
Mhm.
it's wrong, it's wrong, right? And the more we push ourselves in a direction that has no feeling to it, I think an examination needs to happen. Like like just really get clear around, and you don't get clear by through more struggle or like you were saying, like forcing yourself, but just getting back, relaxing, and letting the ego drift for a bit and just see what your intuition and wisdom comes up with, right? Because it is there for a purpose. It is there to guide you. And personally, it hasn't steered me wrong when I've listened to it. It hasn't, you know.
So
Um,
true. Sometimes can be confusing to know which is the ego and which is the intuitive voice, right?
well, for
Because
me, I don't know what your difference is, but for me, one is yelling, and one is quite gentle and kind.
yeah, and yet when you hear the gentle and kind voice, the yelling voice is like, no, that's not true. Don't
Yeah,
listen
yeah,
to that,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like, no,
yeah, yeah.
this is look
Don't
at the
listen to it.
evidence here. Look at the evidence here. This is how you've always been. You can't do that, right? And then you're like, oh yeah, yeah, I better stay safe. Because we're wired. We're wired to keep safe. We're wired to be in a way that we're conditioned to be, whether it is by outer forces or by our own beliefs. We're just wired to be that way, and sometimes it feels like it's hard to believe that because it feels like we're so simple, right? Something else just has to be wired in and I'll be a different person. Yeah, it's that simple. It's like a computer, and you know what's going to lift that up a little bit and make you feel better about it, to know that you're not your brain, to know that you're not your ego. You are that intuitive voice that's there that cannot be wired in. You
That's
just
right.
needs to be listened to.
You're the one that's experiencing the life,
Yeah.
right? And the more we get in touch with that, then everything else just becomes a process of living. It doesn't it and that's what I've noticed with all the prison bars. I can make them prison bars, or I can make them part of of part of the process. It's just part of the game. Yeah, you know what? Every I don't know anything that doesn't have a, excuse my language, a shit sandwich that you have to eat periodically. There are some things in a business that people just don't like doing, like paperwork, right? If you
In
you
the
need to,
coaching business too, it's
yes,
not all
absolutely.
like,
Everything comes comes free. Like like there's you have to pay taxes, you have to do this, you have to, there are a lot of things that it's
funnels,
comfortable. But the key
marketing.
But the key is it's not anything that's indicating that there's something wrong with what you're doing. All it is you're just being rubbed up against preferences. You have preferences. We all have preferences, right? I would sooner be doing this than that, right?
Mhm.
But if your compass is pointed in the right direction, not everything's going to feel comfortable. But I guarantee you, it will be a lot. You'll be bobbing along as opposed to fighting the waves.
You'll be motivated to bob along,
Bob
right?
Bob Lang. Hey, that could be a song, eh? Bob Bob Lang, kind of a thing.
I love
But
it.
it's funny. God, I just had another song coming. Somebody had played this, and I thought it was so true. You know the nursery song, "Row, row, row your boat."
I do.
Well, if you listen to the words, I don't know who came up with the song. I'll have to look it up. But row, row, row your boat gently down the stream.
Mm-hmm.
Merrily, merrily, merrily. Life is but a dream.
Mm, I love it. I
Yeah.
never really thought about that song that way. It was just like, go to sleep. See where you focus on. It was just a means to a
Exactly.
different end.
Yeah. 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 And like what Adina says, she says, the waves get smaller as you grow. And but the key is you can't tell the ocean to stop the waves. You just need to learn to be be a cork,
Right
go
then. Yeah.
ride them, go with the flow, right? And when you're surfing, no, I've never surfed, but even body surfing, I had challenges. and my kids will tell a funny story about me on the surf in Los Angeles. But anyways, you don't get up the first time, right? You don't get up the first time. So it's you just got to learn to ride it. Hey, Paul, thanks for joining in. Um, and
Hi, Paul.
yeah, boom, boom from Paul. But yeah, no, it's fun. I know. I know you've got. Oh, I like this. Sometimes you miss the wave. Yeah.
Sometimes you get caught up in the waves too, turns
Hey.
out,
Yes.
and
Yes.
stumble around a bit, right?
But you're
And then you
safe.
get up,
There's this.
and then
There's a
you get
sense
up.
of
Yeah.
safety. You just get up. Take the sand off out of your trunks or whatever. And you just carry on. But
Sounds like you've been there.
I really need a vacation. A friend of mine's in Hawaii right now.
You and I both.
Yeah. So uh, I know you have. Is it time or do you?
It's almost time, yeah.
It's
I
almost.
have parental duties to
Yes.
fulfill a little earlier today. But it's been an amazing conversation about motivation, right? Who doesn't need to figure out what motivates them?
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it was a good.
just reading some of the last minute comments here. If you avoid the wave, you could get hurt. Gert. I thought, who's Gert? Oh, I know. Texting problems, and hearing something very profound. Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that. It is an incredible life we live. We all live. And just one of the lines I love from a coaching friend that shares it often. He says, um, it's a wonderful life. Wouldn't it be a shame that we miss out, right? And when we learn that it is part of all the processes, when we learn to navigate, point our compasses um, in a direction that we want to go in, and understanding that, hey, there are going to be some turbulences. The waves are always there. Nobody ever tells the ocean, calm down. You know, Sailors know it, right? They know how to play with it. They know how the tides work. And so it's really about understanding more about you. So I really appreciate this conversation today.
It was a really good one, as usual.
We'll let our audience judge that. But yes, no, I
No,
personally
no,
loved it.
we decide
Yeah.
that it is a good conversation.
Yes.
Do
Yes.
you like that refrain? It was a good conversation. And I'm sure that's the way it's being perceived.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. Looking at the comments, I think people got it. And please, if you're watching the recording, please leave a comment. We love to hear them. Any questions? Our contact information is in the descriptions, so we're always available. We have social media, Instagram, Facebook pages. We're on YouTube Live also, and I know some people like to watch it through YouTube. And thank you, Adina. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you, everyone,
Appreciate
for showing
everybody's
up.
comments and for showing up. Next week, we've got potentially some, not for next week, but we got maybe some potential guests lined up for March, which is kind of exciting. I got to share a few things with you at some point in time. But anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and stay motivated.
Yes.
I'll see you next week, Rick.
All right. Cheers.
Ciao.